On May 28th, Porsche unveiled the new facelift to the 8th generation of the iconic Porsche 911. And what they did was, instead of just unveiling one model, they unveiled two different cars. One of the models is a naturally aspirated 911 Carrera, the base model, starting at approximately $120,000. And then they also unveiled a very complex hybrid called the Porsche 911 992.2 GTS Hybrid. Very long name, very complex car. If you want to see my reactions to that car in my previous video, please click on the link here in the upper right hand corner to go check out that video after you've watched this one. But in this video, I want to kind of recap some of the opinions that have been floating around this new 992.2 GTS Hybrid. I listened to a lot of podcasts on my way in. I listened to a lot of Porsche podcasts, car podcasts, and then I also wanted to recap some of the comments that you guys left on my last video. So I went through, I looked for a few of the comments, and we're going to talk about it. My name is Don. You're watching The Better Car Guy. Please click like on this video, subscribe to my channel, and let's just jump right into this video. So in my last video about the unveiling of the 992.2, from now on I'll call it the .2 hybrid from Porsche, I was pretty impassioned about some of the changes that Porsche made to the highly iconic 911, especially on the GTS with the hybrid setup. I think this fundamentally changes the 911 in ways that have never been done before and can set this car on a path that may just turn off a lot of enthusiasts. I didn't like the way they got rid of the twist to start and replacing it with a cheap looking start-stop button. I don't like the integration of the front aero flaps in the bumper. I kind of think it distracts from the look of the car. And I also question the long-term reliability of the whole hybrid powertrain because in my opinion, hybrids tend to be a very problematic car to maintain. So in this video, I am not going to spend a lot of time recapping my thoughts on the 992.2 hybrid GTS. You can check that out in this video in the upper right hand corner. But what I want to use this time to do is to kind of recap the opinions of experienced Porsche owners and podcasters to see what they're thinking about the car, because in my opinion this seems to be a very highly divisive approach that Porsche has taken. I also want to jump into the comment section of my video and see what you guys have been saying about my opinions about the 992.2 and see whether you agree or disagree with me. Now, one of the things I will say is you guys have been mostly positive in the comments. There were no name calling or anything like that, and I do appreciate that. But if you want to leave your comments on this video, please go down below and just leave some comments, and I may recap them in a future video. But for now, let's start with the podcasters. I do listen to quite a few podcasts on my commute to the office, and we're going to jump into that right now. Now, if you drive Porsches, you probably listen to Spike Feresten's podcast called Spike Car Radio, and this week he was on with his co-host Johnny Lieberman. The other host on that podcast, Paul Zuckerman, was traveling, so it was just Spike Feresten and Johnny Lieberman hosting the show. They jumped right in. They were both largely positive about the changes. Spike has complaints about how he turns on his current 911 GT3 RS. He doesn't like using what he calls the thumb-like device to kind of turn the car on. He has a key and then he has to turn the thumb. And he's been saying for a long time, Porsche, either give us a key to turn the car on or replace it with a stop-start button. I still have my opinion that the stop-start implementation kind of looks cheap in the new 992.2. Johnny Lieberman is reserving his judgment for a driving impression, so he wants to get his hand on the new .2. He wants to be able to drive the car before he gives what his thinking is on the car. They were both kind of dubious about Porsche claiming that the new hybrid setup in the .2 hybrid eliminates turbo lag, because they've said that in the past with the launch of the 997, but they kind of are overall surprised that Porsche is making that claim. They want to see the direction the company goes with the Turbo S, the Turbo, the GT3, where would those cars kind of fall, whether they would fall on the NA side or on the hybrid side. So they're just waiting to see how that kind of plays out. The other podcast I listen to is the Intercooler podcast, and this is with Dan Posner and Andrew Frankel out of the UK. They didn't jump right away into talking about the Dot 2, but about 11 minutes in, they started talking about the car. They described it as a facelift, but I think Porsche really released two new cars. They did a facelift with the NA model, and then they brought out this new hybrid car, which is a 911 in name only with new technology. Andrew Frankel was able to be a passenger in the GTS being driven by Yogi Burmeister, and I believe he's a professional Porsche race driver. And he couldn't really tell the difference between the Dot 1 and the Dot 2 because he wasn't the one actually piloting the car. I mean, Yogi, of course, is probably going to beat the snot out of the car and be a very good driver. But Andrew is waiting until he gets his hands on the car to kind of give his impression as to how the car handles and feels. Does it drive better than the Dot 1, etc. They talked about the back seats being removed. They know that the GT3, this is his opinion, he thinks the GT3 is not going to get the hybrid system. They kind of commented that now the base 911, the 911 Carrera, is a six-figure car. That's very expensive, guys. There's a lot of competition in that space or even below that space. So paying over six figures for a base 911 is a lot to stomach. So Porsche is going to have to do something to kind of convince people to part with their money, especially when you can get some really good competitor cars for around or below that type of money. Now, one of the good things I like about Porsche cars is they retain their value. So yes, you may spend a lot more up front, but when the depreciation hits, you're not going to lose a lot. So that's one thing I think Porsche is going to have going for it. Not so sure about the hybrid GTS. The hybrid powertrain, I think, is a wild card. What will that do to depreciation? A lot to be seen. The other podcast I was listening to is Nine Works Radio. This is also another British podcast with Andy Brooks, Lee Sibley, and Max Newman. They were very confused as to why Porsche used the hybrid GTS to do drag racing against the Dot 1. They spent a lot of time talking about, the technical things, the new wheel designs, the new colors. There was one thing that they did that I did not pay attention to, and I have to go back and listen to. They played a clip of the sound that the GTS Hybrid made, and it sounded a lot flatter. It doesn't have that high-pitched wail that we've come to expect of the flat six. So it seems as if this new, either it's the exhaust or the hybrid setup, has kind of taken away something from the way the 911 sounds. So I'm going to have to hear it myself, and maybe you guys may have picked up on that. So let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. They did comment on the hybrid setup being totally different from the way Porsche has implemented hybrids in the Panameras and the Cayennes and the other cars that do have hybrid setup where you can plug it in. In this 911 GTS hybrid, it is a self-replenishing hybrid. So as you drive it, the car would recharge the battery, unlike the other cars where you have to plug it in order to charge up the batteries. So now I'm about to do what I was looking forward to in this video, which is going over some of the comments you guys left on my last video. And again, you can check that video out by clicking on the upper right hand corner. There's a little pop-out banner. You can go check that video out. Whilst you're there, like the video, subscribe to the channel to keep up with my content. I cover everything automotive. But let me jump into some comments that you guys left. So this user is Riggs1590. And he says, from my last video, I agree with most of your observations. The push start button is very poorly executed, but then I never liked the clumsy key in the Dot 1. The worst thing in my opinion is the digital dash. Really not a fan of that at all. Maybe it's my age, but I prefer the analog cars, and I kind of agree with you. I wish Porsche had kept the analog tachometer in the middle of the dash, but like everything, Time changes, things move on. They've implemented a full digital dash. It's customizable. Maybe you can bring up something that kind of looks like it, but I think it's a bummer that Porsche got rid of that analog tech. Another user, Jonathan Bunt 1990, he says, agreed, looks stupid, what a slap in the face to put electric motors in it and eliminating the front trunk space at that. I didn't catch that. How did I miss that? James Hildebrand 1 says, I prefer the new GTS styling. I just don't like the all digital dash and the startup button, but the rest is executed pretty well in my opinion. I do like the way the back looks. It looks a lot more cohesive, it looks cleaner, it looks prettier, if that's a word, than the current dot one. So in some aspects I think the styling works, but in others I think some of the things they took away kind of takes away from the car. Carfan 3762, he says, well done, contrary to you, I don't mind the front end aero treatment at all. That's those little fans on the bumpers. I don't like them. We'll agree to disagree. What I profoundly dislike are the round tailpipes in the chunky square. Now I like that. When I look at the rear treatment and I saw what they did with the tailpipes, I was like, okay, that looks good. So we'll disagree on that. What were they thinking? To answer your question, you can have the back seats reinstalled at no cost. Thanks for letting me know that. As for the legendary key, well, let's be honest, I remember the real key disappeared with the 997 generation, and since then it's been gimmicky stuff. So the start-stop button, despite it not looking classy, is not a real loss in my opinion. The .2 hybrid system is effectively a power boost solution while complying with emission controls regulations. You cannot drive this in EV mode. And yes, I'm all with the PDK only option. We'll disagree. We will disagree. You must have a manual in a Porsche. We must have a manual in a Porsche. The manual gearbox will be missed by many. Let's hope the 992.2 GT3 will still have an NA engine compatible with the fabulous 6-speed manual. A lot of the podcasters were thinking that the GT cars will not have this hybrid setup, but I want to see how Porsche is going to get that power out of the new 3.6 engine to kind of make the GT cars faster than the GTS Hybrid. So I want to see how they do that. That's going to be a technical marvel if they pull that off. Thank you so much for that. That's a very thoughtful comment. Varinva left a comment. I'm going to shorten your name. Porsche is heading in the wrong direction. 992.1 was simpler and a lot better. Glad I bought a 2023.1 C2 with sports design in GT Silver with black Mojave interior. I would love to see that car. That just sounds so delicious, the way that color combo came out. It's just beautiful with enough power and torque. So I like the color combination, enjoy the car. And then my final comment is Zuma WI8YC. I totally agree with you. Now, guys, I didn't just go in and pick out the ones of the people who agreed with me. I just kind of liked the way they sounded, and I just wanted to repeat them to you. If you disagree, leave your comments, and I may pick it up in another video. But totally agree with you. I am disappointed with Porsche and precisely on the new 911. Let us see how the GT3 and the Touring is going to be. And if they're going hybrid, that's it. No more Porsche. I am driving a GTS 992.1 and he's waiting for the GT3 Touring. So a lot of thoughtful comments, a lot of divisive comments, on this new .2 from Porsche, the 8th generation of the iconic 911. It is stirring some passions. But again, guys, I don't want to drag this on too long. My name is Don. You're watching The Bitter Car Guy. Leave some comments down below and I may take it up in another video. But thanks for watching. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel. I'll see you on the next one. Peace.